She thought no one noticed her, until mysterious letters from upstairs revealed the truth. Someone was watching, someone who saw her completely. In letters from upstairs, one quiet librarian is about to meet the billionaire next door. Before we get into the story, comment below where in the world you are watching from today. The old elevator in the Brooklyn apartment building creaked and groaned as it made its way down to the lobby. Imani Clark sighed and checked her watch. It was already 11 p.m. and her night shift at the college library was about to start. She'd have to take the stairs again. Imani adjusted her simple blue cardigan and grabbed her worn leather bag. At 28, she had grown used to the quiet routine of her life. Work at night, sleep during the day, and spend her free time reading or tending to her small collection of plants. It wasn't exciting, but it was hers. "Hold that door, please," Imani called out as she rushed toward the building's entrance, where an elderly neighbor was leaving. Mrs. Peterson turned and smiled. "Off to work, dear?" "Yes, same as always," Imani replied with a small smile. "Have a good night," the older woman patted her arm. "You too, sweetie. Be safe out there." Walking down the dimly lit street, Imani didn't notice the black car parked across from their building, nor the man watching her from the top floor window. Malcolm Renault stepped back from the window of his penthouse. He had lived in this building for almost a year, but few people knew the reclusive billionaire was actually in residence. Most assumed the penthouse was just one of his many empty properties. At 30, Malcolm had everything money could buy and nothing that truly mattered. The tech company he had started in college was now worth billions, but success had only brought more isolation. People either wanted something from him or were too intimidated to approach him, except for her, the woman with the kind eyes who lived on the third floor. The one who smiled at him once when they passed on the stairs, not knowing who he was. Just a genuine smile, the kind no one had given him in years. "Mr. Renault, your dinner is served," announced his housekeeper, interrupting his thoughts. "Thank you, Grace. I'll be right there." His voice was quiet but firm. Malcolm sat at his large dining table alone, as he did most nights. The penthouse was elegantly furnished with expensive art and modern furniture, but it felt empty. As he picked at his food, he thought again of the woman from the third floor. He had learned her name was Imani Clark from the building directory. He had seen her watering plants on her fire escape, humming softly to herself when she thought no one was looking. Tomorrow, he decided. Tomorrow he would do something different. When Imani returned from her shift the next morning, exhausted and ready for sleep, she almost missed the plain white envelope on the floor near her apartment door. Her name was written on it in neat handwriting. "What's this?" she mumbled to herself, picking it up and unlocking her door. Her apartment was small but cozy. Bookshelves lined the walls and potted plants occupied every windowsill. It wasn't much, but it felt like home. Imani kicked off her shoes and sat on her worn sofa, carefully opening the envelope. Inside was a neatly folded letter, written on expensive-looking stationery. "Dear Imani, I've noticed how gently you care for your plants each morning, the way you speak to them as if they're friends, the way you smile when they bloom. It's a small thing, perhaps, but in a world where most people rush past beauty, you stop to nurture it. You are more seen than you know." A friend Imani read the letter twice, then a third time. Her heart beat a little faster. Who would write something like this? And who had been watching her with her plants? She should have felt creeped out, but something about the words felt sincere, even tender. She placed the letter on her coffee table and stared at it, unsure what to think. "This is weird, right?" she asked her cat, Gatsby, who had jumped onto the sofa beside her. The cat blinked slowly in response. That night, Imani found herself checking each face in her building more carefully. Was it the quiet guy from apartment 2B, the new woman on her floor, the elderly couple upstairs? Each possibility seemed unlikely. When she returned the next morning, another envelope awaited her. "Dear Imani, today I noticed you carrying that vintage copy of Their Eyes Were Watching God. It's one of my favorites too. The way Hurston writes about finding your voice, it's powerful. I wonder what other books have shaped you. You are more seen than you know." A friend Imani couldn't help the small smile that formed on her lips. Who was this person who noticed such details about her? She had indeed been carrying that book. Having just checked it out from the library for a reread, the letters continued to appear every few days. Each one mentioned something small about her that most people would never notice. The yellow scarf she wore when it rained, how she always left breadcrumbs for the birds in the park across the street, the way she quietly helped Mrs. Peterson with her groceries. After 2 weeks, Imani found herself looking forward to the letters. They made her feel something she hadn't felt in a long time. Special, noticed, important. "I got another one," she told her friend Tasha over coffee one afternoon. Tasha raised an eyebrow. "Are you sure this isn't some stalker situation? It's kind of creepy that someone's watching you so closely." "I know it should feel that way," Imani admitted, "but it doesn't. The letters are never invasive or inappropriate. They're just kind." "So who do you think it is?" Tasha asked, stirring her coffee. "I have no idea. I've been trying to figure it out." Imani sighed. "Part of me doesn't want to know. What if I'm disappointed? Or what if he's gorgeous and totally into you?" Tasha countered with a grin. Imani rolled her eyes but couldn't help smiling. "I doubt it's that simple." From his penthouse, Malcolm watched as Imani left the building with her friend. He knew it was strange, writing to her this way, but normal approaches seemed impossible. If he introduced himself as Malcolm Renault, she would see the billionaire, not the man, the headlines, not the person. His phone rang, disrupting his thoughts. "Yes," he answered. "Mr. Renault, the board is requesting your presence at tomorrow's meeting," his assistant informed him. "They're concerned about your public absence affecting stock prices." Malcolm frowned. "Schedule it for 2 p.m. I'll be there." After hanging up, he returned to his desk where a blank sheet of stationery waited. He had spent most of his life hiding behind emails and conference calls. These letters were the most honest words he had written in years. The next morning, Imani found a new letter. "Dear Imani, last night I heard you humming on the fire escape. It was Claire de Lune, wasn't it? The melody stayed with me all evening. Music has a way of saying what words cannot. You are more seen than you know. A friend, Imani." Felt a flutter in her chest. This time she decided to respond in her own way. She put on the green sweater the letter writer had once complimented and deliberately left a book, Letters to a Young Poet by Rilke, visible in her hand as she left for work. It was a small gesture, but it felt like the beginning of a conversation. Days passed, and the letters continued. Imani began leaving small replies, wearing things mentioned in the letters, reading books referenced, or leaving a potted plant outside her door, with a note that simply said, "For a friend who sees." The next morning, the plant was gone, replaced by another letter thanking her. Imani found herself falling for someone she had never met. Someone who saw her in ways no one else did. It was both thrilling and terrifying. "I think she knows I exist." "Now," Malcolm told his only real friend Daniel over the phone. "You mean the woman you've been writing anonymous letters to like some kind of Victorian poet?" Daniel chuckled. "When are you going to actually talk to her like a normal person?" "It's not that simple," Malcolm sighed. "Once she knows who I am, she'll know you're an actual human being, not just words on paper," Daniel interrupted. "This can't go on forever, Mal." Malcolm knew his friend was right, but the thought of seeing disappointment in Imani's eyes when she realized who he was made his stomach twist. One rainy evening, Imani was returning from the library when she noticed unusual activity around her building. Several news vans were parked outside and reporters stood under umbrellas, cameras ready. "What's going on?" she asked the doorman. "Haven't you heard?" he replied, looking excited. "The rumors were true. Malcolm Renault, you know, the billionaire. He's been living in the penthouse all this time. Someone from his company leaked it to the press." Imani's heart skipped. "The penthouse? I thought no one lived there. He's very private. Barely see him. Myself and I work here every day, but he's definitely up there." Imani rode the elevator in a daze. Malcolm Renault, the tech genius whose face occasionally appeared in news articles. He had been living above her all this time. When she reached her floor, an envelope waited by her door. With shaking hands, she opened it. "Dear Imani, by now, you've probably heard. I wanted to tell you myself, but I was afraid. Afraid that once you knew who I was, Everything would change. That you would see the headlines instead of me. I'm the one who's been writing to you, and I would like to finally meet you properly. If you're willing, I'll be waiting on the rooftop garden at sunset tomorrow. You are more seen than you know. Malcolm Imani. Leaned against her door, the letter clutched to her chest. Malcolm Renault had been watching her, writing to her all this time. The reclusive billionaire had noticed her when no one else did. Was it all just a game to him? Was she some amusement for a bored rich man? Or was there something real in those letters? She didn't know whether to feel special or foolish as she entered her apartment, closing the door on the outside world and the man who had seen her all along. A small silver key fell from the envelope she was still holding. The key to the rooftop garden. Imani stared at it, her heart pounding. Tomorrow at sunset she would finally come face to face with the man behind the letters, the man who had been upstairs all along. Imani barely slept that night. The letter from Malcolm Renault lay on her nightstand, and the small silver key seemed to shine in the dim light of her bedroom. She picked up the key again, turning it over in her fingers. Was she really considering meeting him? "What would you do, Gatsby?" she asked her cat, who was curled at the foot of her bed. The cat yawned in response. By morning, reporters were still camped outside the building, hoping to catch a glimpse of the elusive billionaire. Imani had to push past them to get to the library for her shift. "Excuse me, do you live in the building? Have you ever seen Malcolm Renault?" a reporter asked, shoving a microphone in her face. "No comment," Imani mumbled, hurrying past. It felt strange to lie, even though she had never actually seen him in person. At the library, Imani couldn't focus. She misplaced books and jumped whenever someone approached the front desk. Her co-worker James noticed her distraction. "You okay? You seem a million miles away today," he said, helping her sort returned books. "I'm fine. Just didn't sleep well," she replied, not meeting his eyes. James leaned against the desk. "You know, there's a rumor going around that the famous Malcolm Renault lives in your building. Is it true?" Imani's hands froze momentarily. I don't know. I mind my own business." "Well, if you ever meet him, put in a good word for me," James joked. "I've got some great app ideas." Imani managed a weak smile and returned to her work. As the hours passed, her mind kept drifting to the rooftop garden and what waited for her there. In his penthouse, Malcolm paced anxiously. The news of his residence had spread faster than he'd anticipated. His phone had been ringing non-stop, with calls from his PR team, business partners, and board members. "I need some privacy, at least for today," he told his assistant over the phone. "No meetings, no calls unless it's an emergency." "Sir, the board is demanding a statement about the leak, and the press office says, 'Tomorrow,'" Malcolm interrupted, firmly. "I'll deal with everything tomorrow." After hanging up, Malcolm walked to his window. He could see reporters still gathered at the entrance to the building. This wasn't how he wanted Imani to find out who he was. The letters were supposed to be a bridge, a way to connect without his wealth and status getting in the way. Now that bridge felt shaky at best. Would she come to the rooftop? Or would she see him as just another rich man playing games? Malcolm had never felt so nervous in his life, not during multi-billion-dollar negotiations, not during television interviews. Watched by millions, this was different. This was real. Tasha called Imani during her lunch break, her voice excited. "Girl, is it true? The Malcolm Renault lives in your building?" Imani sighed. "Apparently." "And you never told me? This is huge. He's like one of the richest men under 40 in the country. And he's single." "I didn't know until yesterday," Imani replied honestly. She hesitated, then added, "Tasha, there's something else." "What?" Tasha asked, her interest piqued. "Remember those letters I told you about? The ones that kept appearing at my door? The secret admirer notes? What about them?" Imani took a deep breath. They were from him, from Malcolm Renault. The silence on the other end lasted so long that Imani thought the call had dropped. Then Tasha's voice returned, loud and shocked. "Are you serious? The Malcolm Renault has been writing you love letters?" "Imani, this is like a movie." "They're not love letters," Imani protested weakly, though she wasn't entirely convinced herself. "And I don't know what to do. He wants to meet me today at sunset on the rooftop garden. And you're hesitating because... Tasha sounded incredulous. Because what if it's all some kind of joke? What would a man like that want with someone like... Me? Imani Clark, you listen to me, Tasha said firmly. You are beautiful, smart and kind. Any man would be lucky to have you. Billionaire or not. After the call ended, Imani stared out the library window. Sunset was in 5 hours. She had until then to decide. Back at her apartment after her shift, Imani stood in front of her closet, still undecided. The key to the rooftop felt heavy in her pocket. If she went, what would she wear? If she didn't go, would she regret it forever? She pulled out a simple green dress, the color he had once mentioned in a letter, saying it reminded him of hope. She laid it on her bed, then stepped back unsure. This is crazy, she muttered to herself. He's a billionaire. I'm a librarian. This doesn't happen in real life. But the letters had been real. The words had touched something in her that had been dormant for years, a hope that someone could see her, truly see her. On the top floor of the building, Malcolm adjusted the small table he had set up in the rooftop garden. The evening was warm, with a gentle breeze. The setting sun cast a golden glow over the potted plants and climbing vines that made the space feel like a secret oasis above the city. He had prepared everything himself, dismissing his usual staff. A bottle of wine, 2 glasses, and a simple meal from his favorite local restaurant, nothing too extravagant. He wanted tonight to be about the connection they had formed through his letters, not about his wealth. As the sun began to set, Malcolm checked his watch. Would she come? The uncertainty was almost unbearable. Imani stood in front of her mirror wearing the green dress. Her hair was down around her shoulders, and she wore minimal makeup. She looked like herself, the self she had always been. She picked up the last letter, reading it one more time. You are more seen than you know. Those words had become a lifeline in her quiet existence. Whether this meeting was a beginning or an ending, she needed to know the person behind them. Taking a deep breath, she picked up the small silver key and left her apartment. The elevator ride to the top floor seemed both too short and too long. When the doors opened, Imani found herself in a hallway she had never visited before. At the end was a door marked Roof Access. Her hand trembled slightly as she inserted the key. The door swung open to reveal a garden that seemed like something from a dream. Plant-covered trellises created walls of greenery, and string lights twinkled among the leaves. And there, standing beside a small table, was a tall man in a simple button-down shirt and slacks. Malcolm Renault looked different from his photos in the business magazines, less polished, more real. His dark hair was slightly tousled by the breeze, and his eyes, warm brown eyes, watched her with nervous anticipation. For a moment neither spoke. The city stretched out below them, bathed in the orange glow of sunset, but they saw only each other. You came, Malcolm finally said, his voice softer than she had imagined. Imani nodded, still standing by the door. I had to know if the person in the letters was real. And the person who received them, who understood them, was she real too? He asked. A small smile formed on Imani's lips. I guess that's what we're both here to find out. Malcolm gestured to the table. Would you join me? I promise no pressure. If at any point you want to leave, you can. Imani hesitated, then stepped forward into the garden. I have questions. I'd be disappointed if you didn't, he replied. As she sat across from him, the city lights began to twinkle below them. The distance between them was small, just a table's width, but the gap between their worlds felt enormous. Why me? Imani asked directly. Malcolm looked down at his hands, then back at her. Do you remember the day you smiled at me on the stairs? About 3 months ago. Imani frowned slightly, trying to recall. I pass people on the stairs all the time. You were carrying a stack of books. I was coming down as you were going up. You looked directly at me and smiled, not because you knew who I was, but simply because that's who you are. Kind, present. Malcolm's voice was earnest. Do you know how rare that is in my world? People either want something from me or are too intimidated to be real. Imani remembered now. A man in a casual hoodie, head down until she passed. She had smiled at him automatically, the way she did with most neighbors. "So you started writing letters because I smiled at you?" It seemed too simple. Malcolm shook his head. "I started noticing you. The way you hum when you water your plants. How you always leave food for the stray cat behind the building. The books you carry. I saw someone who finds joy in small things, who cares deeply without showing off." He paused. "Someone real in a world that often feels fake to me." "So you watched me," Imani said, a hint of discomfort in her voice. "Not in a creepy way," Malcolm hurried to explain. "Just noticed you when our paths crossed. The letters, I know it's unusual, but I didn't know how else to reach out without my name and everything that comes with it getting in the way." Imani considered his words. "You could have just introduced yourself as a neighbor. And you would have Googled me that same night and found out I was worth billions," he replied with a sad smile. "Would you have seen me as just a man after that? Or would you have seen the headlines?" Imani had no easy answer for that. The wealth he represented was so far removed from her experience that it was hard to imagine not being affected by it. "I don't know," she admitted honestly. "But lying by omission isn't a great way to start, whatever this is." Malcolm nodded, accepting her criticism. "You're right, I just wanted a chance to know you, and for you to know me, without all the noise that surrounds my name." As they talked, the tension between them gradually eased. Malcolm poured wine for them both, and they shared the meal he had prepared. He told her about growing up wealthy but lonely, about building his company from a dorm room project to a global enterprise, about the emptiness of success without connection. Imani shared stories of her childhood in a middle-class neighborhood in Queens, her love of books that led to her career as a librarian, her dream of someday writing stories of her own. Hours passed, and neither noticed the time until a cool night breeze made Imani shiver slightly. "You're cold," Malcolm observed, immediately standing to offer his jacket. As he placed it around her shoulders, their eyes met. The distance between their worlds still existed, but something else had formed, a bridge of understanding, of seeing each other as they truly were. "Thank you for coming tonight," Malcolm said softly. "I know it took courage." Imani looked up at him, suddenly aware of how close they were standing. "Thank you for the letters. They made me feel seen when I thought I was invisible." For a moment it seemed as though he might lean down to kiss her. Instead, Malcolm stepped back, respecting the newness of whatever was growing between them. "May I walk you back to your apartment?" he asked. Imani nodded, feeling both disappointed and relieved by his restraint. As they rode the elevator down to her floor, an awkward silence fell between them. The real world was rushing back in. Tomorrow the reporters would still be outside. His wealth and her modest life would still be facts they couldn't change. At her door, Imani handed back his jacket. "So what happens now?" Malcolm's eyes were serious. "That depends on you. I'd like to see you again, properly this time. No more anonymous letters. Just two people getting to know each other." "Two very different people," Imani pointed out. "Yes," he acknowledged, "but maybe that's not a bad thing." As they stood there, the sounds of the city filtering through her window, Imani made a decision. She would step into this uncertainty, this improbable connection, and see where it led. "I'd like that," she said finally. "But this time, no secrets." Malcolm smiled, relief visible on his face. "No secrets," he agreed. As he turned to leave, Imani called after him. "Malcolm, the letters. Don't stop writing them, even though I know who you are now." He looked back, his expression softening. "I won't." After he had gone, Imani leaned against her closed door, heart racing. She had just agreed to date Malcolm Renault, the reclusive billionaire who lived upstairs, the man whose words had reached past her defenses and touched her heart. What she didn't know was that outside her building, a photographer had captured Malcolm entering earlier that evening. By morning, speculation about the mysterious woman who had caught the attention of New York's most eligible bachelor would be spreading across the city. Their private connection was about to become very public. The headline of the New York Daily Star screamed across the front page, "Billionaire bachelor's mystery woman. Who has captured Malcolm Renault's heart?" Below was a grainy photo of Malcolm entering Imani's building, his face partially visible in profile. Imani nearly dropped her coffee when Tasha texted her the article link the next morning. "Have you seen this?" Tasha wrote. "They don't know it's you yet, but it won't take long." With shaking hands, Imani clicked the link. The article was filled with speculation about Malcolm's love life and mentioned that sources close to the billionaire confirmed he had been spending time with someone in his building. There was even a quote from a building insider saying the mysterious woman was not from his world. "Great," Imani muttered. She had barely processed their meeting last night, and now the whole city was gossiping about them. Her phone rang, an unknown number. She hesitated before answering. "Hello? Imani? It's Malcolm." His voice sounded tense. "I just saw the article. I'm so sorry about this." Imani sank onto her sofa. "How did they even know?" "Someone must have tipped off the press. I've been dealing with this kind of thing my whole life, but you haven't. Are you okay?" "I don't know," she admitted. "They don't know it's me yet, but they might figure it out," he finished her thought. "Listen, I understand if you want to back away from whatever this is between us. The media attention can be overwhelming." A small part of Imani wanted to do exactly that, retreat back into her quiet, anonymous life. But a stronger part remembered the connection they had formed on the rooftop. The way he had looked at her like she was the only person in the world. "I'm not backing away," she said with more confidence than she felt. "But I do need time to think about what this means." "Of course," Malcolm replied, relief evident in his voice. "Take all the time you need. And Imani, check your door." After they hung up, Imani opened her apartment door. A small envelope waited, a letter just like before. Inside was a single piece of stationery with Malcolm's elegant handwriting. "Dear Imani, last night under the stars, I finally saw your smile up close. It was even more beautiful than I remembered. Thank you for giving me a chance to know the woman. Behind the smile that changed my world, you are more seen than you know. Malcolm." Despite everything, Imani felt a warmth spread through her chest. The letters still had power, even now that she knew who wrote them. At work that evening, Imani could feel eyes on her. News had spread quickly among her co-workers that Malcolm Renault lived in her building, and everyone seemed curious if she had seen him. "So, have you run into the famous billionaire yet?" James asked as they sorted books together. "Once or twice," Imani replied vaguely, avoiding his eyes. "What's he like, as arrogant as they say?" James pressed. Imani frowned. "He seemed normal, actually." Before James could ask more questions, their supervisor called him away, leaving Imani alone with her thoughts. She hadn't told anyone about her meeting with Malcolm except Tasha. It felt too new, too fragile to share. As she was leaving the library after her shift, Imani spotted a sleek black car parked across the street. The window rolled down to reveal Malcolm's face. "Need a ride?" he asked with a small smile. Imani hesitated, looking around to see if anyone was watching. "Won't people see us together?" "They will eventually anyway," Malcolm pointed out. "But we can be discreet for now if you prefer." After a moment's hesitation, Imani slid into the passenger seat. The car's interior was luxurious but understated, like Malcolm himself. "How was work?" he asked as they pulled away from the curb. The normalcy of the question made Imani smile. "It was fine. People are asking about you." "People are always asking about me," Malcolm replied with a resigned shrug. One of the downsides of success. As they drove, Malcolm told her about his day. Meetings with investors, calls with his development team, the constant pressure of running a global tech company. Imani listened, trying to imagine a life so different from her quiet days among books. "Sorry," he said finally. "I'm boring you with business talk." "No," Imani said honestly. "I'm just trying to understand your world." Malcolm glanced at her, his expression softening. "My world feels a lot less empty with you in it." When they reached their building, Malcolm's driver pulled into a private garage beneath the structure. "To avoid the photographers out front," Malcolm explained. They rode the elevator in comfortable silence, Malcolm's hand lightly touching hers. When they reached her floor, he hesitated. "Would you like to have dinner tomorrow? At my place?" He asked. "I could cook for you," Imani raised an eyebrow. "You cook?" "Don't look so surprised," Malcolm laughed. "I wasn't always wealthy. I had to feed myself through college before the company took off. I'd like that," Imani said with a smile. As she turned to go, Malcolm caught her hand and gently pulled her back. For a moment, they stood close, his eyes questioning. Then, slowly, he leaned down and kissed her, a soft, tender kiss that felt like a promise. "Good night, Imani," he whispered against her lips. "Good night," she replied, her heart racing as she stepped off the elevator. The next morning, a loud knock woke Imani from a peaceful sleep. When she opened the door, her neighbor Mrs. Peterson stood there, eyes wide with excitement. "Imani, dear, is it true? Are you dating Malcolm Renault?" The elderly woman thrust a tabloid into Imani's hands. On the cover was a photo of Imani and Malcolm in his car the previous night. The headline read, "Renaud's mystery woman revealed, billionaire dating ordinary librarian." Imani's stomach dropped. "Where did you get this?" "It's everywhere, dear. The internet, the morning shows, everyone's talking about it." Imani thanked Mrs. Peterson and closed the door, leaning against it as the reality sank in. She was now officially news. Her private life was suddenly public property. Her phone buzzed with messages from friends, family, and even old classmates she hadn't spoken to in years. Everyone wanted to know about her relationship with Malcolm. When she called Malcolm, he answered immediately. "I've seen it," he said before she could speak. "I'm so sorry, Imani. This isn't what I wanted for you." "What do we do now?" she asked, her voice small. "First, I'm coming down to your apartment. We should talk in person." Minutes later, Malcolm was at her door, looking tired and concerned. He had barely slept, spending most of the night dealing with the press fallout and trying to trace the leak. Inside her apartment, Malcolm looked around at her books, plants, and simple furnishings with genuine interest. Gatsby the cat approached him cautiously, then rubbed against his leg in approval. "At least someone's not bothered by the headlines," Malcolm said with a small smile, petting the cat. Imani sat on her sofa, the tabloid still in her hands. "I don't know if I can handle this, Malcolm. I'm a private person. I don't want my life dissected by strangers." Malcolm sat beside her, taking her hand. "I understand. Believe me, I've been dealing with this my whole life, and it still bothers me." He paused. "The press will lose interest eventually, but for now, we have options." "Like what?" Imani asked. "We could be strategic, control the narrative by giving one exclusive interview, then request privacy. Or we could just ignore it all and live our lives." He squeezed her hand. "Or, if this is too much too soon, we could take a step back until things cool down." The last option hung in the air between them. Imani looked at their intertwined fingers, then at the man beside her, a man whose words had touched her soul long, before she knew his face or name. "I don't want to take a step back," she said finally, "but I don't want to do interviews either. Can we just try to be normal together, despite all this?" Relief washed over Malcolm's face. "Yes, that's exactly what I want too." That evening, instead of going to Malcolm's penthouse as planned, they decided to stay in Imani's apartment. Malcolm brought groceries and they cooked dinner together in her tiny kitchen, laughing as they bumped into each other in the limited space. "This is cozier than my place," Malcolm admitted as they ate at her small table. "Sometimes I feel lost in all that empty space upstairs." "We could always move the plants from your rooftop garden down here," Imani joked. "Make it even cozier." Malcolm looked at her thoughtfully. "You know, that's not a bad idea." "What? Turning my apartment into a jungle?" "No," Malcolm laughed. "But maybe finding a middle ground. A place that's neither my world nor yours, but ours." The idea of ours made Imani's heart skip. It was too soon for such thoughts, and yet she couldn't help imagining a future with this man who saw her so clearly. Later, as they sat on her sofa, watching an old movie, Malcolm's phone kept buzzing. He ignored it until it became impossible. "I'm sorry," he said, finally checking the messages. "There's an issue with our European launch that needs my attention." Imani nodded, trying to hide her disappointment. "I understand." Malcolm looked torn. "This is the hard part. balancing what I've built with what I want to build with you. We'll figure it out, Imani assured him, though she wasn't entirely convinced herself. Before leaving, Malcolm left another letter on her kitchen counter. This was becoming their ritual, a tangible reminder of how they had connected. After he was gone, Imani opened the envelope. Dear Imani, tonight, in your small kitchen, watching you move with such grace in a space that is truly yours, I realized something important. All my life I've been searching for a place that feels like home, not a house or an apartment, but a feeling of belonging. Tonight, beside you, I found it. You are more seen than you know. And now, so am I. Malcolm, the next. Few weeks brought both joy and challenges. The media attention intensified before gradually shifting to other stories, though photographers still occasionally waited outside their building. Malcolm and Imani created their own bubble, spending evenings in her apartment or on his rooftop. Garden, sharing stories, dreams, and increasingly, their hearts. He wrote her letters that she kept in a special box beside her bed. She introduced him to her favorite books, marking passages that reminded her of him. But reality had a way of intruding. Malcolm's work often pulled him away at unexpected moments. Important meetings ran late, business trips came up suddenly, and crisis calls interrupted their time together. I'm sorry about dinner, Malcolm said one evening after cancelling their plans at the last minute. The Tokyo office needed immediate decisions on the merger. It's okay, Imani replied, though the disappointment was clear in her voice. I understand. Your work is important. Not more important than you, Malcolm insisted. But as weeks passed, Imani began to wonder if that was true. Malcolm's world was so vast, so demanding. How could she, a simple librarian with a quiet life, ever truly fit into it? The question lingered even as their relationship deepened. They were falling in love. Neither had said the words yet, but both felt it growing between them. It was in the way Malcolm's eyes followed her around a room, in the way Imani's hand automatically reached for his when they walked together. Then came the invitation that would test everything they were building. My company is hosting a charity gala next weekend, Malcolm mentioned one evening as they sat on her fire escape watching the sunset. I'd like you to come with me, as my date. Imani tensed. This would be their first public appearance together, a formal declaration to the world that they were a couple. Will there be a lot of people there, she asked, already knowing the answer. Yes, Malcolm admitted. Business partners, celebrities, politicians, and press, of course. I don't know, Malcolm. That's a lot of attention. Malcolm took her hand. I know it's asking a lot, but I'm tired of hiding what we have. I want to walk into that room with the woman He stopped himself, then continued more carefully. With the woman who matters most to me. Imani looked into his eyes and saw the sincerity there. What would I even wear to something like that? Malcolm smiled, relieved by her implied acceptance. Whatever you want. You'd be beautiful in anything. The week before the gala, Imani's anxiety grew. She had never attended such an event, never mingled with the kind of people who would be there. Despite Tasha's excitement helping her shop for a dress, Imani couldn't shake the feeling that she would be out of place in Malcolm's world. The night before the gala, Imani stood in front of her mirror, wearing the elegant blue gown they had chosen. It was beautiful but felt like a costume, something the real Imani Clark would never wear. A knock at her door interrupted her thoughts. Malcolm stood there holding a small box. I know the gala isn't until tomorrow, but I wanted to give you this tonight, he said, stepping inside. Imani opened the box to find a delicate silver pendant with a small key charm, a replica of the rooftop key he had given her. To remind you of how we began, Malcolm said softly, and that no matter what happens tomorrow, what matters most is what's between us, not what the world sees. Imani felt tears spring to her eyes as he fastened the necklace around her neck. The weight of it felt right, a tangible symbol of their connection. Thank you, she whispered, turning to face him. Malcolm, Before she could finish, his phone rang. The screen showed his assistant's name. Malcolm sighed deeply before answering. This better be important, David. Imani watched as Malcolm's expression changed from annoyance to shock. Whatever news he was receiving, it wasn't good. When did this happen? Who leaked it? Malcolm demanded, his voice tense. I'll be there in 20 minutes. He hung up, his face grim. What's wrong? Imani asked, suddenly afraid. Someone from inside the company has been selling information to our competitors, Malcolm explained, already moving toward the door. Critical security protocols, upcoming product details, years of work potentially compromised. Do you know who did it? Malcolm's jaw tightened. I have my suspicions. I need to handle this tonight. Of course, Imani said, understanding the gravity of the situation. Go. At the door, Malcolm turned back. This won't affect tomorrow. I promise I'll be back in time for the gala. After he left, Imani touched the key pendant around her neck. Tomorrow she would step fully into Malcolm's world for the first time. She only hoped she wouldn't lose herself in it. What she didn't know was that across town, a woman from Malcolm's past was planning her own appearance at the gala. Someone who had her own history with the billionaire, and who saw Imani as nothing more than an obstacle to be removed. The night of the gala arrived, and Imani stood in her apartment, ready but nervous. Her blue gown flowed elegantly to the floor, and the key pendant from Malcolm rested against her collarbone. She had styled her hair in a simple updo and applied minimal makeup, wanting to feel as much like herself as possible. Malcolm had called earlier, assuring her he had handled the company crisis and would pick her up at 7. As the clock neared, that hour Imani's anxiety grew. In just a few hours she would be standing beside one of the most powerful men in New York, surrounded by people who lived in a world she could barely imagine. At precisely 7, a knock came at her door. Malcolm stood there in a perfectly tailored tuxedo, looking handsome but tired from his long night dealing with the security breach. You look beautiful, he said, his eyes taking in every detail of her appearance. Absolutely stunning. Imani felt a blush rise to her cheeks. You don't look so bad yourself. Malcolm smiled, some of the tension leaving his face. Are you ready for this? As ready as I'll ever be, she replied honestly. In the car ride to the hotel where the gala was being held, Malcolm briefed her on who they might encounter. Business. Partners, celebrities, politicians, names Imani had only seen in magazines. He squeezed her hand reassuringly when he noticed her growing nervousness. Just be yourself, he said softly. That's who I want beside me tonight. When they arrived, photographers lined the entrance, flashbulbs creating a disorienting wall of light. Malcolm protectively placed his arm around Imani's waist as they walked the short distance from the car to the door. Malcolm, over here. Mr. Renault, who's your date? Miss, look this way. The shouted demands of photographers made Imani flinch, but Malcolm guided her steadily forward, his hand warm and secure against her back. Inside, the ballroom was a scene from another world. Crystal chandeliers cast a golden glow over elegantly. Dressed guests, a string quartet played softly in one corner, while waiters in crisp uniforms circulated with champagne and hors d'oeuvres. Malcolm Renault. There you are, called a distinguished older man, approaching them with a wide smile. And who is this lovely young lady? Senator Collins, this is Imani Clark, Malcolm introduced them. Imani, Senator Collins, is one of our most important supporters for tech education initiatives. The senator shook Imani's hand warmly. Delighted. To meet you, my dear. Malcolm hasn't brought a date to one of these functions in years. You must be very special. Before Imani could respond, more people approached, each wanting a moment of Malcolm's time. He kept her by his side, introducing her to everyone, his hand never leaving the small of her back. A constant reassurance in this unfamiliar territory. You're doing great, he whispered during a brief moment alone. Everyone loves you. Imani tried to smile confidently, but she couldn't shake the feeling of being an outsider. The conversations around her were filled with references to places she had never visited, people she had never met, a lifestyle she had never lived. Malcolm, darling, a silky female voice cut through the crowd. It's been far too long. A stunning woman in a red gown approached them, her perfectly manicured hand extended toward Malcolm. Her blonde hair was styled in an elegant twist, and diamonds glittered at her throat and wrists. Malcolm's body tensed beside Imani. Victoria, I didn't know you were in town. I wouldn't miss your charity gala, darling. It's always the event of the season. The woman's gaze shifted to Imani, assessing her with cool blue eyes. And this must be the librarian everyone's talking about. The way she said librarian made it sound like a flaw rather than a profession. Malcolm's jaw tightened. Victoria. Evans, this is Imani Clark. Victoria is the daughter of one of our early investors. How quaint, Victoria said with a thin smile. I've always found it so admirable when men like Malcolm take an interest in helping people from simpler backgrounds. Imani felt the sting of the comment but kept her expression neutral. It's nice to meet you, Victoria. Victoria leaned closer to Malcolm, placing her hand on his arm with familiar ease. We must catch up later, Malcolm. I have some fascinating insights about that Tokyo merger you're working on. As Victoria glided away, Imani turned to Malcolm with a questioning look. Who is she really? Malcolm sighed. We dated briefly a few years ago. It didn't end well. She seems to think it's not entirely over, Imani observed. Trust me, it is, Malcolm assured her, but a shadow had fallen over the evening. As the night progressed, Imani became increasingly aware of the glances and whispers that followed them. Some were merely curious, but others, particularly from women like Victoria, were clearly disapproving. During dinner, Imani was seated between Malcolm and a famous tech journalist who seemed more interested in how she had landed Malcolm than in anything she had to say. On Malcolm's other side sat Victoria, who kept leaning over to whisper in his ear about people and events Imani knew nothing about. Are you enjoying yourself? Malcolm asked during a brief moment when Victoria was engaged with someone else. It's overwhelming, Imani admitted. Malcolm frowned slightly. We can leave early if you want. Before Imani could respond, the event chairman called Malcolm to the stage to give a speech about the charity they were supporting, a foundation providing technology education to underprivileged communities. As Malcolm spoke passionately about creating opportunities for those without privilege, Imani felt a swell of pride. This was the man she was falling in love with, someone who used his success to help others. Her moment of pride was interrupted by Victoria sliding into Malcolm's empty seat. He's quite the speaker, isn't he? Victoria said, sipping champagne. Always so passionate about his causes. Imani nodded politely. The foundation does important work. Listen, dear, Victoria said, her voice dropping to a confidential tone. You seem like a nice girl, so let me give you some advice. Men like Malcolm, they may play at being regular people, but they're not. They live in a different world, and eventually, they always return to it. You don't know Malcolm as well as you think, Imani replied evenly. Victoria laughed softly. Don't I? I've known him for years. We share the same friends, the same background, the same understanding of how this world works. She gestured around. The ballroom. This is his natural habitat, not some cozy apartment with plants and books. The words hit a nerve, voicing fears Imani had been trying to suppress. Could Malcolm really be content with her simple life when his own was so grand? Malcolm and I have a connection that goes beyond superficial things, Imani said with more confidence than she felt. Victoria's smile was predatory. Connections fade, dear. Reality remains. You'll see. When Malcolm returned to the table, he immediately sensed Imani's discomfort. What did she say to you? He asked quietly. Nothing that matters, Imani replied, not wanting to create a scene. But Victoria's words had planted seeds of doubt that were difficult to ignore. Throughout the rest of the evening, Imani found herself watching Malcolm in this environment. How easily he moved among the wealthy and powerful. How at home he seemed in this world of privilege. By the time they left, Imani was emotionally exhausted. In the car ride back to their building, Malcolm noticed her unusual silence. What's wrong? He asked, taking her hand. And don't say nothing, I know you better than that. Imani looked out the window at the city lights passing by. Do you? Sometimes I wonder if we really know each other at all. Your world and mine. How so different, Malcolm? Is this about Victoria, whatever she said? It's not just about her, Imani interrupted. It's about all of it. Tonight made me realize how far apart our lives really are. You belong in that world of galas and important people. I don't. Malcolm turned to face her fully. "I don't belong there any more than you do. That world, it's part of my business, not who I am." He squeezed her hand. "The real me is the one who writes you letters. The one who feels more at home in your tiny kitchen than in any ballroom." Imani wanted to believe him, but doubts lingered. "How can you be sure? What if you wake up one day and realize you need someone who understands that part of your life? Someone like Victoria?" "Because I love you," Malcolm said simply. The words hung in the air between them. It was the first time either had said it aloud. "I love you, Imani Clark," he repeated. "Not because you fit or don't fit into some artificial world, but because when I'm with you, I'm real. And that's something I've been searching for my entire life." Tears filled Imani's eyes. "I love you too," she whispered. "That's why I'm so afraid of losing you." When they reached the building, Malcolm suggested they go to the rooftop garden, the place where they had first met face to face. Under the stars, surrounded by plants and string lights, he took both her hands in his. "I need to tell you something," he said seriously. "The security breach at my company. It was Victoria." Imani stared at him in shock. "What? How do you know?" "We traced the leak," Malcolm explained. "She used old access codes I had given her years ago when we were together. She's been selling information to competitors for months. But why would she come to the gala tonight? Wasn't she afraid you'd know?" Malcolm shook his head. "She didn't know we had discovered her, and she came because she found out about you, about us. She thought she could drive a wedge between us, make me doubt what we have." "She almost succeeded," Imani admitted. "She made me question whether I could ever really fit into your life." Malcolm stepped closer, his eyes intent on hers. "You're not meant to fit into my life, Imani. We're meant to build a new life together. One that takes the best of both our worlds." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small envelope, another letter. Imani opened it with trembling fingers. "Dear Imani, tonight, as you step into what others call my world, I want you to know a truth I've carried in my heart since the day you first smiled at me. My world was empty before you. It was full of things but devoid of meaning. You brought color to a life that was only shades of gray. If I could give you anything, it would be the certainty that you are exactly where you belong, beside me, not because you fit into some preconceived notion of who should be there, but because you have created a space that exists only for us. You are more seen than you know, and I am more loved than I ever dreamed possible. Yours always, Malcolm." As Imani looked up from the letter, Malcolm knelt before her, a small velvet box in his hand. "I had planned to wait," he said softly, "to give us more time, but tonight made me realize that time isn't what matters. Certainty is, and I have never been more certain of anything in my life than I am of us." He opened the box to reveal a ring with a simple but elegant diamond. "I chose this because it reminded me of you, beautiful without trying to be, valuable not for how it looks but for what it is." Imani's heart raced as Malcolm continued. "Imani Clark, you saw me when I was invisible. You loved me for who I am, not what I have. Will you marry me? Will you help me build a life that belongs to neither your world nor mine, but to us alone?" Tears streamed down Imani's face as she nodded. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes." Malcolm slipped the ring onto her finger, then stood and pulled her into his arms. Their kiss was a promise of understanding, of acceptance, of a love that had begun with anonymous words and grown into something unshakable. 6 months later, Imani stood on the balcony of their new home, a brownstone in Brooklyn they had renovated together. It was neither as grand as Malcolm's penthouse nor as modest as her old apartment, but it was perfectly theirs. Books lined. The wall's plants thrived in every room, and a small garden flourished on the rooftop. Malcolm joined her, wrapping his arms around her waist from behind. "What are you thinking about, Mrs. Renault?" Imani smiled at the name she was still getting used to. "About letters, and how the words we write can change our lives." On the table inside lay a leather-bound book, a wedding gift from Malcolm. Inside were all the letters he had written her, preserved alongside photographs of their journey together. The final page held the most recent letter, written on their wedding day. Dear Imani, today, as we join our lives together, I am reminded of how this all began, with words left at your door, words that tried to capture what I saw in you when the rest of the world walked by without noticing. Now, as your husband, I make this promise. I will see you every day of our lives together. I will notice the small things, the way you smile when you're lost in a book, how you hum while tending to your plants, the kindness you show to strangers without thought of return. You taught me that being seen, truly seen, is the greatest gift one person can give another, and I will spend my life trying to return that gift to you. You are more seen than you know, more loved than words can express, and more essential to me than breath itself. Forever yours, Malcolm. I have something. For you, Imani said, turning in his arms. She handed him an envelope, her first letter to him. I thought it was time I wrote back. As Malcolm read her words, his eyes filled with tears of joy. The woman who had once been invisible had found her voice, and the man who had everything had found the one thing he truly needed. From their simple brownstone, they could see both the stars above and the city below, a perfect view of the world they had created together, a world where love had built a bridge between two souls who might never have connected if not for letters from upstairs.